some farm organizations have already suggested taking money out of direct payments, such as National Farmers Union and Iowa Farm Bureau. To share with us, Mary Kay and I are both Iowans. So share with us what you'd like, your policy position, where you'd like to see that direct payment money go.
Sure. You know, National Farmers Union has always opposed direct payments, and I will be very honest with you. Within the organization, it is a conflict and a struggle, but the votes are still there at our national convention to redirect that money into other safety net programs. When we're sitting here looking at good commodity prices, farmers, I've never met a farmer that says, you know, I want the government to take care of me. You know, and so when the market is returning a good value back to you, where you are actually covering your cost of production and you're able to go down to the hardware store and keep that money in your small town, then it's very difficult for us to go to those other members of Congress that we need for the votes for 218 and say, but we're going to dole out a direct payment to people while we have good commodity prices. We think that money could definitely be better used in countercyclical loan payments, to strengthen crop insurance and expand those programs, so that we could also bring those back and work with the SURE program, which is a big program that NFU has pushed forward for our permanent disaster. So we don't have to go back and continually ask for ag hoc disaster, which is another whole hill to climb to explain to members of Congress who don't have agriculture in their district.
So you want the $5 billion to stay, but to be reinvested in other areas.
Correct, and in safety net areas.
Okay.
Well, and many people in this room are Farm Bureau members, and you know that what different states decide is their policy is only their policy as long as until they bring it up to the national level. And you know, there was not an interest in doing away with direct payments for us at the national level. Now, I think that everybody knows it's a little bit of a regional issue. I mean, from a 20,000-foot level, I can go to many parts of the Midwest and say, okay, we want to do away with direct payments and put it into crop insurance, and people would say yes. And I can go to many areas in the South and get skinned alive by even raising that issue. So I don't think that eliminating direct payments is ever anywhere we're going to be on that. I think there's also, even for people who say to me, I want to eliminate direct payments, there's a couple of flawed views. One is that I believe a lot of the farmers who say, I can do without it, just put it into a really good, highly subsidized crop insurance program. In their mind, think, oh, I can get really high subsidies at the 90 or 95% level. And I guarantee you, $5 billion won't get you subsidized heavily at the 90, 95% level. It's just way, way, way too expensive. And you know, I don't fault farmers for not understanding that, because Chandler and I couldn't tell you exactly how much you would get either. But I think there's a perception, and that's the wrong perception. I mean, off the cuff, could we get you highly subsidized at the 75 or 80% level with that amount of money? I would guess, yeah, but not above that. And secondly, the other thing I think that comes up with farmers on elimination of direct payments is that some farmers believe we'll quit taking a beating in the press from the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post if we don't have direct payments. And I think that's a fallacy. I think the minute we don't have direct payments for people like the Environmental Working Group to pick on, then they're going to pick on subsidized crop insurance. So unfortunately, I don't think the hammering ends with that. But now that's not to say that in the end there won't have to be some cuts in direct payments. Again, I suspect we'll have cuts in virtually every program in agriculture. But elimination of direct payments, I'm going to beat you on that, Chandler.
Well, we'll keep discussing it, but we've been discussing it for 20 years. But I mean, direct payments, even if we do get rid of them, it doesn't. I do agree with part of some things that Mary Kay said. If we get rid of direct payments, people who do not like agriculture are going to just find something else to beat us up on. But when it comes back to the perception of paying producers when commodity prices are high, we just find that very difficult to justify in Farmers Union, and that's been policy for us for 20 years.
No, sir, I would say that, and I think in the GAO report that you referenced, it actually had a suggestion for this, but there is a lot more discussion about, do you pay direct payments even in good years? And Carl Zuloff was here yesterday and talked about that, and the GAO reports had it, and I've seen it elsewhere. And you know, that's where we have difficulty in Washington defending direct payments, to be really honest about it, is because when prices are high, people say, well, why would we give it to you? So I do believe there will be considerable discussion about, is there a way to make direct payments more flexible where you get them when times are tough, but you don't get them when times are good, and there's various ways that you would accomplish that. But I think that's likely to be a very large point of discussion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and I know your annual meeting and your delegate session is next week.
Right.
So it's a little premature for some of the changes, but do you think your groups, your delegates will consider that?
I mean, you know, like I said, our Rocky Mountain Farmers Union is very supportive of direct payments. I would think, you know, right now with National Farmers Union, our policy is to eliminate them, but putting some type of cap on them or some type of trigger where we're not paying them out during high prices. You know, though it's not fully what, and if you want, that's heading in the right direction. And I think something that we will need to discuss March 13th and 15th in San Antonio will be our national convention next week. So this will be something that we'll discuss.
Of course, one of the things about making direct payments sensitive to a price trigger, a revenue trigger, could be that you're then making them out of the green box in terms of the WTO commitments. I don't know, given the status of the WTO, whether that matters right now, but certainly there have been a lot of different proposals out there about instituting some sort of a price or revenue trigger on that.
Well, again, that's one reason, and if you would rather see us put a lot of that into crop insurance and expand that program, privatized insurance companies are never going to be able to do crop insurance just because of the inherent risk that's spread across the whole country and the amount of money it costs to run a crop insurance program. The only entity big enough to underwrite crop insurance is the federal government. And so by putting that money over there and expanding those programs to commodities that don't have good crop insurance programs and bringing Sure back the way it was originally written before we had ran it through the Senate, even changed quite a bit of it from the original way it was taken. But I think that is a way for us to keep farmers. You know, these safety net programs are not to keep farmers in the black and put money in the bank, it's to keep them going out of business during hard times. When the market is there, farmers know how to make money. We have to have the market, and these programs are there when the market's not there.
Now, Farm Bureau delegates weren't mentioning Sure in quite the same light that you did. They had a much different take on that. Mary Kay?
Well, we pretty much said we love everything, which is no surprise. I think just again, if I went to the 20,000 foot level, other than the dairy industry in this country, virtually any farmer would say, keep the 08 Farm Bill, make this little tweak or that one, but keep it. And that's essentially what our delegates said, although they said, you know, we love direct payments, we love a really good risk management program, we love countercyclicals and marketing loans and the acre program and ad hoc disaster assistance. But the one thing they didn't say they loved was the Sure program, the permanent disaster. They didn't say they hated it, they just didn't say they loved it. So we've taken that as an initial signal of where we would be as far as that. And that's really a very timely point for us to all keep in mind, because Sure is one of the programs that will expire this October 1st. So less than 6 months from now, if it's something we want to extend, we got to figure out where to find $1 billion a year to be able to extend it. And so the question comes back, and I suspect this is what our delegates were thinking. I like it, but I don't like it well enough that I'm willing to take $1 billion out of direct payments, or $1 billion out of the acre program, or $1 billion out of subsidized crop insurance, or whatever it is. So that is kind of the only difference we have. But I think we're struggling just like the four groups here are struggling on policy, on getting some direction on where do we want to go. And it is difficult because, again, we'll write a very different farm bill depending on how much budget cut occurs.
Yeah, I think this is, I'll bring it up when we move off Title I again, and I'll be the first to say it, but this is a time when we're going to look at consolidation. There's looking at the acre program and looking at the Sure program, and again, I can't get ahead of my convention, so otherwise I will get in trouble. But again, we're going to look at, do we take the acre program and tweak it a little bit and add it to the Sure program? Will that make it a better program where more Mary Kay's producers will be more in support of it? And if we can expand the role of crop insurance where it works better for our southern crops, and they will participate at the level needed so that the Sure program works for them, then we won't have to come back and do these ad hoc disaster programs. And I didn't bring the number with me, but we added it up over the last 10 years. How much money we have spent doing ad hoc disaster programs was way more than what the Sure program would have cost if we would have fully funded it and expanded crop insurance. So I mean, when you look at the two, this is, and you're not going to use it every year.
Well, one thing is sure about Sure, and that is it's going to change, because it didn't work.
It has to change.
And much of the reason it did work was the supplemental stimulus funding that went into it, and so if we do Sure, it will have to change.
I fully agree. It was not funded at the level it needed to be in the Farm Bill for it to function at its most efficient level.
And is acre going to have to change as well?
Acre has got to change. My producers have told me that one of them spent 18 hours filling out all the paperwork to get their payment. That program, we're going to have to do something with it just to cut down on how much time you spend at the FSA office, if nothing else. But I really think, again, we're going to have to look at bringing programs together, and if there are two programs that might be able to be consolidated to work better for producers, that might be something that we will look at our convention next week.
Eric, any thoughts on Maker?
Oh, I think it will. You know, I sense that there's a lot more, you know, the rhetoric to me in the fall last year was, let's go to a county-based acre program, and I sense the rhetoric on that is diminishing. And again, people say, well, county level would be great, but at $750 million to $1 billion a year, where do I get the money to be able to do that? Do I care enough about that, again, to take money out of crop insurance or direct payments or conservation programs? And so that maybe people are now focused more in a different direction on it. But how it changes, and it is going to be very connected with the SURE program and with crop insurance. And so probably as we tweak all of those.
So crop insurance will be up for modification again. It already took a huge budget cut as part of the SRA negotiations, $6 billion out of it. Do you think it might be subject to further cuts or just some modifications in how the subsidies are structured?
I definitely think it'll be on the block with everything else that we have in Title I and Title II. National Farmers Union, though, has always been a very, very big supporter of crop insurance. You know, if we continue to look down the road 5 and 10 years, as we shouldn't even call them farm bills, but I know we'll never get the media to change it. They're food bills is what they are. But as we continue to do farm bills, you know, it's our projection crop insurance is going to be what we're left with at the end as we continue to have budget problems and continue to work on what farm safety net programs are accepted and are able to be passed. And so we will defend crop insurance till the end.
But you know, a couple of points on crop insurance. One is that this is very different for us in this farm bill. We've never done crop insurance as part of the farm bill before. In fact, we've specifically done it in different years than the farm bill, and we've been able to add money. Well, now as you see crop insurance moving more from yield to revenue, and you see the acre program and other programs coming this way, they now are hitting many of the same risks, and I think forever in the future, crop insurance will be part of the farm bill discussion. And so it is going to be there in the trade-offs of what do you do about money. And it is indeed a bigger pot of money than is direct payments or all the conservation programs. So when it's the biggest pot of money out there, guaranteed people are going to look at it. Now, what I would caution folks about is all of the cuts that have happened in the crop insurance program over the last few years have been to the companies. They haven't been to the farmers. But we're now to the point where if I take the pot of money that's in crop insurance, 69% of it is farmer premium subsidies, 69%. That is not to say that we couldn't find some additional savings in that 31%, but it's getting slimmer. And so when we think about crop insurance cuts, we got to make sure we're thinking about the likelihood that at least some of it will come out of premium subsidies versus out of companies.